Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.
So from there on, I became my own doctor. And I never saw a doctor after that anymore, except those that were my patients. And then I knew I had hit on the greatest discovery of the century. I had found the secret of maintaining excellent health without anybody's help, just by understanding nutrition. And then I had another interesting experience. I wrote a book on 7 progressive diets. In other words, the person coming from an average junk food diet, I laid out 7 diets, changing every week, progressing higher each week. In the 7th week, they were on a good diet. The first was a moderately good diet. And I didn't discuss disease at all. Then I published this book, and the Natural Hygiene Society from Canada called me up and asked permission to reproduce in French. I said, sure, go ahead. And then after a few years, I started getting calls and letters from all over the world because this book was circulating. It was only a small booklet. It's called Achieving Superior Nutrition Through 7 Progressive Weekly Diets, which I'm giving you a copy of. And then people calling me up, they said, you know, I had high blood pressure and it's gone. I followed your diet. Then another one said, you know, I had cancer and it's checked, stopped growing. And another one said, you know, I had hardening of the arteries and now the pain is gone. And another one had arthritis, about 50 different diseases, and I had never mentioned disease when I wrote this book. All I did was speak of improving the diet from a poor quality diet to a progressively better diet. And that alone produced cures to almost all diseases. So that was a shocker to me. And then I realized that someday I would write a book, I haven't done it yet, with no discussion of disease at all, just showing how eating properly is all you need to know. Why? Because if the man and woman have sex, and the woman gets pregnant and a beautiful baby is born. And all this is happening just in ignorance. The people are not controlling it, and the childbirth and all that. The child is born from 2 tiny cells that are so small you can't even see them. And a whole human being is born, all from the intelligence of nature. Now, if nature has the wisdom to do all that, why can't she undo every diseases that she adapted to produce according to the way the person is living? So I realized that someday I would write a book without discussing disease for the average man who knows nothing, to show him just by changing his diet he will become a free soul, free of all worries, fear of accidents, death, everything, because the body knows what to do. All you have to do is just provide what it needs, and that's the problem. We don't know what the body needs. And the literature, the orthodox literature, is completely wrong because they do not know the history of the human race. That's what caused me to, after many years in practice, and having been a vegetarian, a vegan, a raw food, or every diet you can imagine, I tested. And I even spent 4 years at my own expense at $40,000 with thousands of mice putting on every diet recommended by every authority. And you know what? 98% of the diets recommended by the authorities almost wiped out my mice. So I said to Dr. Kershaw, who was my mentor, you know, all these diets that are being recommended, they're hurting the people. These people do not seem to know what is needed. So then I began to study primitive man, Paleolithic diet, going back 2 million years. And when I studied it, what amazed me was after studying, going through 6 books of Stephenson, who lived with the Eskimos in Alaska, what amazed me was their diet was a mono diet. It was so simple, they were not even eating vegetables because it was so cold up there, nothing was growing. And these people lived on fish, say fish alone. They had 3 meals a day, eating fish, raw and cooked. And their diet was about 80% raw, 20% cooked. And they lived on 1 food at a time. So if they couldn't get anything else, they lived on fish, say, for 8 months, 3 meals a day. Then the seal season started. Then they lived on seal meat and the seal oil, which they also used for cooking in their igloos. And then when the reindeer were running, then they ate meat. But the reindeer were only seasonal, so they lived mostly on one food at a time. And you know that they were in perfect health. They didn't know anything about diseases until the white man started to establish bases in Alaska, Sitka, Alaska, until they came up to hunt the whales and to try to get the bone of the whales for selling and hunting for hides and furs and all that. And then that was some of the Eskimos started to eat that food. As soon as they ate the white man's grains, they started with the serious diseases. The so-called, diphtheria, the lung diseases, the skin diseases, smallpox, and all those things, the epidemics. And those that ate that way were wiped out. And those the primitive Eskimos that lived on only one food. It just goes to something which is amazing. And these people did not eat any vegetables because they didn't have any. Now they lived on, say, fish alone. Now how is it they lived on one food and they were in perfect health and the happiest race that you could find, laughing about 25% quicker than we do. And anything would make them laugh. They felt so good. Now, if they could live on one food, then you had to realize that what they ate had everything the body needed, because they were eating mostly seafood, and the seafood, everything they needed was incorporated in their bodies, so when they ate the bodies of these animals, they got a perfect diet without having to run here and there to get this food and that food. Whereas we in civilization, we eat 1,000 varieties, and we're sick as hell. And they ate maybe one variety at a time. And they were happy, and strangely enough, they said they never got bored on their diet, even though they ate the same food 3 times a day for 8 months. So it just goes to show that the food tastes are related to what we're eating. Because I know when I gave up fruit, when I ate vegetables, they tasted sweet to me, and if I didn't prepare it myself, I would swear that somebody put sugar in my lettuce, in my celery, in my cucumbers, things like that. So I realized that our taste buds were damaged by the high sugar diet, and we couldn't distinguish the natural taste of foods. And when we gave up the high sugar in the diet, then the instinct, you could live on instincts almost.
Have you done any research when you did your research with the mice on the climate and the diet? Because
yeah, well, the climate and the diet, if you study the primitive races, they ate according to what was in the environment. Now, those that lived in the tropics, where there was a lot of fruit and a lot of animal food, snakes, all kinds of animals thrive in the tropics. Like the Amazon, tremendous amount of species. They ate a lot of species. But what puzzled me in those days, when I was a vegetarian, is why, if they had all these tropical fruits and vegetables growing, why did they eat animal food? And they did. So it just showed that later on I began to understand there was something in the animal food that they knew through thousands of years of experience that was needed by the body. And Weston Price confirmed that. He said he was a vegetarian. He spent 30 years traveling around the world studying primitive races. And he said that there are certain things in animal foods, especially in the fats, that we cannot get in the vegetable kingdom. And actually, if you do study, most of the people thought, the monkeys are all vegetarians. But when you study these animals, you find that there are very few pure vegetarians. Even the cows, when they eat their grass and all that, they're eating nematodes, little worms, and little insects on the grass, and that providing them with their B12 and the vitamin D's and the vitamin X and all the missing things. So very, very few pure vegetarians exist.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.